So Amphibia is officially back, and I am here talking about it, despite the fact that I feel like crap, which is why I sound like crap. I have been literally, and by literally I of course mean figuratively, scraping together the energy to do literally anything over the last couple of days. I have just enough strength left to shoot this review once, so here's hoping my computer doesn't crap out on me. Thankfully, with everything that happened in True Colors, I don't actually have a lot to talk about in this specific episode. It was a good episode, but it mainly just served to reestablish the status quo now that Anne and the Planters are on Earth, which I appreciate a lot. I appreciate that they took the time to establish the new status quo for the show very early on, because one of the things that this show's always been good at is having a status quo even when big stuff was happening. Our main heroes going to a completely different world together and having to assimilate as best as possible into that world is the biggest shakeup to the status quo of this show that we've ever seen. So, showing us what the new status quo will look at is a big deal. As we saw way back in the trailer for this season, their time on Earth does start after they get off the freeway where they landed, with Anne returning home and being thrust into having to explain everything to her parents by a misunderstanding of the Planters. She actually gives a literal presentation to them of everything that happened, save for a few key details. She doesn't talk about the fact that her best friends betrayed her, or that they have a megalomaniacal supervillain, effectively, that they need to defeat. And she didn't talk about her Super Saiyan Blue powers. Like, she didn't not talk about the fact that Amphibia was dangerous, but she didn't go into how dangerous it was and how weird and crazy everything got by the end. And it seemed contradictory that she would do this, considering that the point of this episode was for her parents to learn how responsible she's come as a person, see how much she's grown, and come to see her in a different light and respect her for that. Because it seems like she's being really irresponsible in keeping this information from them. And on one hand, she is. Like, this isn't the best choice she could make. But she is a kid who has the autonomy of a kid. And yet she recognizes that she's the best chance they have of beating Andreas and saving Sasha and Marcy and bringing them home. And getting the Planters back home. And causing her parents to worry more than they're already going to worry. Knowing that she spent, I think they finally confirmed in this episode, it was like 5 months in another world, ensuring that they don't go even beyond that and keep her from doing those things that she is being responsible enough to recognize she needs to do, is in its own way a kind of responsibility. Like, maybe there's a better option than not telling them outright, and they are eventually going to find out. I'm sure they are, and that's going to lead to tension between them. But I do feel like she's trying to make the best choice she can given the situation, which is in and of itself a kind of responsibility. There's a lot of cute stuff in this one I'm not going to go into too much detail about, because it's the kind of stuff you guys really should seek out the episode and see for yourself. Just a lot of the Planters getting used to Earth. There's a whole sequence that the crew working on the show has confirmed that they planned out before the disease that cannot be named quarantine started, where Anne and the Planters go into quarantine in Anne's house so that no one will find out about the Planters. And there's a cute musical number and lots of little cute things happen. There's a reference in here even, like Anne's dad calls Amphibia Amphibiland once by mistake. It was a cool reference to the pilot of the show, the original unaired pilot. Just a lot of cute background stuff, because this was a double-length episode, a full 22-minute episode. They needed to fill it with something, and it felt like it needed to be this long for us to really get a feel for how these characters fit into this new location. And it did a really good job of it. All of their personalities shine through really well, and you can see where Anne got her accepting nature, because she did accept the Planters for what they were very quickly, because her parents accept them too. They don't want to at first, but at her urging, they do, because they can tell how much these people mean to her. And while I definitely don't get the sense yet that Anne's parents feel like the Planters are family the way that Anne does, yet, I feel like we'll get there. and they definitely have interesting dynamics with them. And regardless of how close Anne's parents are to the Planters yet at this point, seeing the Planters play off of them was still very entertaining. The episode really culminates, though, with Anne and the Planters needing to get out of the house and actually do something, so the Planters dress up in human disguises and go with the family to the market. Meanwhile, though, Andreas is waiting to invade Earth wholesale because he wants to get rid of Anne first. He's worried that she is still a threat to his plans and that she might, if she gets desperate, warn humanity about what's coming. So he sends through that robot we saw with the big slashy claws in the trailer to take care of her, but it can't be seen because Andreas doesn't want humanity to be warned of what's coming, obviously. And they fight this robot, and it's so interesting because this thing's obviously more powerful than anything they've come across before. It was specially designed for this. It even seems to have artificial intelligence and even a personality about as developed as Frobo's was. And it does have cloaking capabilities, but they can be beaten by, like, dumping dust or flour or something, or really just anything onto the robot so that you can see that hanging in the air and get an idea of where this thing is. So even cloaking isn't a surefire way to keep from being seen. So as they engage this thing, and Anne is trying not to let her parents see it because she doesn't want them to realize that there's additional danger that she hasn't talked about, it is also holding back, trying not to be seen itself. And this is going to explain why Andreas doesn't just invade now, and why this thing will retreat often enough that they don't have to fight it all out to the finish right away. And I thought it was really well handled. A lot of shows with this Monster of the Week or Battle of the Week formula don't bother to explain this kind of stuff nearly this well, so this was really welcome. And they do eventually drive the robot off by Anne using not like her full Super Saiyan powers, but partial Super Saiyan powers, but afterwards she's totally wiped out again, and she even says she can't explain it, but they make her feel bad. And it seems to be the show implying that there's some, I don't know, like, maliciousness to these powers, that they are, like, inherently negative. But I don't buy that. I really hope they don't go that way. Like, it wouldn't be entirely uninteresting if they did. I guess it would be an interesting take on this shonen anime style of superpower. But we see here for the second time, the power only activates when she needs it to protect the people she cares about. I just don't believe a power like that can be inherently negative. Overall, though, this was a really excellent episode. I really like Anne's parents. Getting to know them over the course of an entire episode really helped me to understand more about Anne. You can see glimmers of some of her personality traits in both of them. And they're both likable, entertaining people in and of themselves. And seeing how well their introduction into the story was handled, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the introduction of all the other new characters we've seen in the various promotional stuff for this season is going to be handled too, because I imagine it'll be handled pretty stinking well. And a lot of those characters, just from the way they look, seem very interesting. All in all, this episode, The New Normal, I don't know if I actually said it or not, because I can barely think straight right now anyway, it was good. It was a very solid episode of the show. It wasn't one of the best, but it did exactly what it needed to do. It started out this season exactly the way I feel like it needed to be started out. And I liked it a lot for that. I will say, though, back when it first started to be theorized that at least some of our characters would be thrown to Earth for this final season, I did say that would kind of bum me out just on principle, because Earth is such a more mundane setting than the cool fantasy world of Amphibia. And I do kind of feel that. I do think I was right to worry about that. But I do think the character stuff will be able to carry the show well enough that before long I won't care anymore. Not to mention that the promotional stuff has shown, and we did a little bit in this episode too when we had a brief aside to Andreas, that we are going to return to Amphibia from time to time. So it's not like that setting is gone completely. As per usual, though, I'd like to know, what do you think of Amphibia, The New Normal, if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video,
Share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content. Subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out the links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.